All right then. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. Welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today is a Sunday Stuff and Things. And on this Sunday Stuff and Things, we have many stuff and things to talk about. I was just doing some editing on my computer, and I did a video from here, from my computer desk, which is why I am sitting here and recording in this place. But yes, this is Sunday Stuff and Things, and we do have stuff and things to talk about, including upcoming videos, things you can look forward to on Stuff and Things, working, and don't get too excited, but Stuff and Things plays. Also, we're going to talk about a very controversial and probably a subject that I don't think anyone has ever discussed before. That's how corporations can be bad sometimes. I'm going to tell you about my latest favorite fountain pen ink. Hey, a little fountain pen action here. And then we'll get into your questions, comments, and feedback in hashtag askstuffandthings. So let's get into it. Oh, Denise, shooby-doo. I'm in love with you, Denise, shooby-doo. Don't know why that song is stuck in my head, but let us talk about the videos that you can look forward to on Stuff and Things, working, and Stuff and Things plays. Okay, so coming up on Stuff and Things, we have the Oliver Charles all-season yak wool sweater review. Now don't roll your eyes or fall asleep. This is a cool sweater. They sent it to me to review, and I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was cool, so that video will be coming out this Wednesday. The Wednesday after that, Pipe Force Episode 2 review. Hold on. There she is, Pipe Force Episode 2. Let's get a little light on that tin. We did the first impressions video already, but the full review will be coming out the week after next. And then we have a photography video. So a couple weeks ago on Sunday Stuff and Things, I showed you, I guess it was 10 photographs that a friend of mine had picked out of a bin of like 100 photographs. Those are the ones that she liked that kind of spoke to her. In this video, I'm just showing you some of my more recent photographs, kind of just showing you how things have been developing with my street photography, and explain the process of taking those photographs and why I may have picked them out. Again, these aren't necessarily my absolute favorites, but these are ones that I consider keepers or things that I'll look at as maybe something that would go in a portfolio or something at some point, but not necessarily in the portfolio yet. Anyway, it's an interesting video. We're just going through and looking at a lot of these photographs and talking about them, and I invite you to come along and check that out. So that'll be coming up soon as well. On working, we have episode 32, and that's where we're going to be checking in on that giant driveway that we've been working on, the stamped and sand driveway. It's huge, it's complex, it's really interesting, and I think it's going really well. So that will be a check-in, probably about 2/3 done in that video. And then the next one after that will be basically completing that giant driveway, getting it all sealed up and just looking pristine. So you'll be able to see this job from the beginning to the very end on that one. And then, some of you may have already noticed this, but I will be posting a video, one video on Stuff and Things Plays on Shadow of the Erdtree, the Elden Ring expansion. Just one. A lot of people wanted me to do a whole series on Shadows of the Erdtree. I would like to do that too. I would not like to let you down, but from what I have gathered, that the expansion for Shadows of the Erdtree is as long as Dark Souls 1. It's as long as an early FromSoft game, and I don't have the time to do that. So what I did do was record, I think, over 3 hours of content. I edited it down to about 2.5, 2:45, 2 hours and 45 minutes or 2 hours and 30 minutes. I can't remember exactly. So it's a very long episode. It covers the very beginning of Shadows of the Erdtree up until the first major remembrance boss and beating that major remembrance boss. So it's a nice, big, healthy chunk of Shadow of the Erdtree. I accidentally had it live for like an hour the other day. I wasn't ready yet. I hadn't done a thumbnail or anything for it. I think I will make that live. Maybe it'll be live by the time you watch this, and I'll put a link for it. That'd make it easier. I'll put a link for it in the description of this video, so you'll be able to link directly to that one video on Shadows of the Erdtree on Stuff and Things Plays. There you go. All right, before we get to the subject about evil corporations, very unique, I know, I want to show you the ink that I have been obsessed over recently, or obsessing over. It is Pilot Iroshizuku Shin-Ryoku. Now, I don't know if you can even tell from what is sloshing around in this bottle, but this is a very beautiful, deep kind of forest green. And basically, I was reading the Le Carré George Smiley books, and they mentioned in there that he always uses green fountain pen ink. And so I was like, do I have any green? And I looked through, and I did have, where is it? I have a Noodler's green here somewhere. It is the last bottle I'm going to grab, of course. Oh yeah, it's a Bad Green Gator, I think. Which is fine. It happened to just look a little kind of washed out to me, not as deep and rich as I would like. So I did some research, and I found, man, on Amazon you can get these Iroshizuku inks for, $15, and they will last you years and years and years and years and years. I still have not emptied a single bottle of Iroshizuku ink that I have purchased. So I got this and I tried it out, and I love it. I put it in my Lamy 2000. I put it in my Lamy Safari with my 1.1 millimeter stub nib on here. And I kind of ruined this page because I just started doodling capital letters on it and stuff. But it is a gorgeous ink. Hopefully that will show off on camera, but I love how deep and rich it is, but it still has this nice sheening to it, some interesting iridescence if you get it in the light properly. There isn't a lot of, some of these Iroshizuku inks you can put, I can't remember what the blue color is, Tsukio maybe, but it's that really deep midnight blue, but you'll get these kind of weird red tones to it when you smear it out. This is basically green. Like, you're not seeing a lot of other colors sort of scintillating within this blend of color, within this ink, but it's just, to me, the perfect green ink. I absolutely love it. Pilot Iroshizuku Shin-Ryoku. Check it out. It's like $15-16 on Amazon, and it is a fantastic fountain pen ink. It also just performs better than the Noodlers, the Bad Green Gator that I had. Like, it just seems to flow through the pen more easily. It's a little wetter feeling, but it does not, there's no bleed or anything. Even on the back here where I had a big Q-tip that I just dipped in the ink and smeared that patch, it did not bleed through. You can see through a little bit, but it did not bleed, and this is Rhodia paper. So, fantastic ink. Okay, but now we have to talk about how corporations are bad sometimes. And I know that's something that nobody has ever said before, but let me wow you with my crazy rant about corporations. Now, I'm not the kind of person who is, like, oh, all corporations are evil, they must all be disbanded and destroyed. I don't love just giant institutions in general because I think they tend to be dehumanizing. I think they end up becoming self-sustaining entities that are more worried about their own perpetuation of themselves than they are about whatever the original thing they were supposed to be there for is. Did that make a sentence? So, like, if you have a business that was for making movies, or not making movies, let's say, I don't know, making electronics of some sort, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and becomes a giant multinational corporation, then it seems as though the making of the product is less important than just the sustaining of the giant, massive corporation, and everything is just feeding this huge beast. So that can happen. Corporations can also be good sometimes. Well, not necessarily good, but they can cause good things to occur. But basically, in general, I'm not a huge fan of anything that tends to take a large number of people and wring the humanity out of them and make decisions that are based less on what is good to do and more on some weird bottom line in a ledger book that doesn't even really make sense. It could be cutting off your nose to spite your face. The perfect example of this, I think, is recently. Well, let's go back. You have probably heard me talk about a podcast before when I mentioned my favorite podcasts, and it was the Around the NFL podcast. It was a podcast I started listening to way back, I think in the 2013 season of the NFL. It's the season where the Seahawks ended up going on to win the Super Bowl, the 2014 Super Bowl. And because I was really excited about the Seahawks, I wanted to listen to a football podcast because I had never really listened to any football or sports podcast before. I found Around the NFL, I started listening to it, I got super hooked on all the guys. Greg Rosenthal, Mark Sessler, Chris Wesseling, and Dan Hanzus. And I loved them all. I thought they were all great. They all contributed something unique to the format. It was sports-centric, it was football-centric, but it was also very eclectic and funny. It was like a comedy show. All their personalities kind of complemented each other. They would bounce off each other. It was just fantastic. And I started following them. It's the only sports podcast I ever followed and ever have followed. And I kept listening to them through the years. We went through a really crazy time when Chris Wesseling ended up getting cancer and dying, and this all kind of played out on the show. So by the time it got to, this May, I had been listening to these guys for years. It was still just, now it was Greg, Dan, and Mark left on the show because Chris had died. But you feel just such a connection with these people because especially listening for that long, really enjoying their personalities, and then going kind of feeling as though you've gone through the whole process of their friend Chris dying, who was also one of the co-hosts. Like, it just, you feel really invested in this. You feel like you're part of the show, and to a certain extent, it's that parasocial relationship that people talk about. And I'm not really prone to that, but you kind of feel this connection with these people. In May, this show that I had been listening to for 11 years just stopped. I would check my podcast feed, no new episodes. I would check their page on NFL.com, and this was an NFL-produced podcast. They worked for the NFL or the NFL Media Group. Check on the NFL, no news. Check their Twitter accounts, no news. Absolutely nothing to explain why this show that had been going for over a decade, multiple times a week, was not posting episodes. And so I started looking at their subreddit. People, again, have no idea. There's just all sorts of conjecture and conspiracy theories and stuff. There was rumors about ESPN merging with the NFL Media Group, and just maybe their contracts were coming up. Like, who knows? Nobody knew. And finally, last week, in my podcast feed, there was a new show called NFL Daily, but it was from the Around the NFL podcast feed. And I thought, what the hell is this? I look at it, and it is Greg Rosenthal, who wasn't the host, but he was one of the co-hosts of Around the NFL, is now doing a daily podcast for NFL media without Dan and Mark. And I looked into Dan and Mark. They're just saying, oh, there's something new is coming up on the horizon, so stay tuned. But there's still not really any information about what happened with the NFL. Greg Rosenthal, the new host of the NFL Daily podcast, he did sort of a eulogy on Twitter, talking about how much he loved working with those guys and doing the Around the NFL podcast, but did not mention why he is the only one still at NFL Media and why the show is now this new format without Mark and Dan, who were very integral to the show working so well. So basically, what I think happened, and I don't have proof for this, but it makes sense just based on what I know about giant corporations, is I think that this show, which was one of the most popular NFL shows in America, very popular in other parts of the world, the NFL has had a huge push to try to popularize American football in the UK and other places in Europe. And this show is very hugely popular in the United Kingdom as far as a football show. They have been amazing ambassadors. They're the only football podcast I ever listened to. They were basically what sustained my NFL fandom. I got all my NFL news from them. I would watch the games. I would watch Seahawks games because I'm a Seahawks fan, but that was about it. Every other thing NFL was through their podcast. They got rid of the podcast, I think, because initially when they were all doing the show, they were also staff writers for NFL.com, but it got to the point where they were just being paid to be media personalities, being on the podcast and appearing on some of the NFL Network shows sometimes. And I think what happened is that the NFL, whatever bean counter there, looked at how much they were making from the actual sponsorships that they would get on the episodes of the podcast, and then contrasted that with how much they were paying 3 hosts to host this podcast and said, this isn't worth it. We're not making enough of a profit on this. And so they decided to axe 2 of the hosts and just have 1 host that they would have to pay. They picked Greg, maybe from seniority, maybe because he was more of a company man, maybe he was the only one willing to do it without the other 2. I don't know. Without thinking about all the goodwill they are losing in a move like this, thinking about all the extra people that are getting pulled into the sphere of NFL. This is a company that makes billions and billions of dollars a year, but they make a decision like this, as far as I can see, based wholly on perceptions of profitability, but being very short-sighted in that, just looking at the ledger book and not looking at all the people you're going to piss off, all the people who would have been pulled in because of this podcast, all the people who had such a huge emotional connection to this podcast and the people on it. It's just, decisions like this to me are so nonsensical, and you see them all the time within these giant, crazy corporate structures. And it puts me in mind of like movie studios back in the day. You know, now pretty much every movie that major Hollywood studios put out is some stupid giant tentpole action film or a superhero film or something that has to do with an existing IP. Back in the day, now obviously the studio system wasn't perfect, but it seemed as though they were more willing to make kind of loss leaders. They would make films that were prestigious that wouldn't necessarily make them any money because they just felt it was a good look to have these kinds of films with their name on them. And it seems that that's kind of gone away, especially within the film industry. And then just in a lot of corporate America or worldwide corporate, I mean, because so many of these corporations are multinational, it seems like that's just kind of gone away as a concept where we're going to put out something good that isn't necessarily going to make any money or a lot of money just because we want our name on that. And I don't know how much money the Around the NFL podcast made, but I know that it had a huge impact just on fans of the NFL. And now that impact is gone, and they've replaced it with a show that is much worse. I don't know what Dan and Mark are going to be doing. I will definitely be listening to their show. I've tried listening to a couple of the episodes of the show with Greg. I don't know what happened. I'm not angry at Greg Rosenthal for continuing the show. I'm sure it was probably a financial decision. I don't know, but it's just not the same. The show needed the dynamic of all of those people together. I don't know. Stupidity. Rampant stupidity. Did any of you listen to Around the NFL? And what did you think of all this nonsense? Let me know in the comments below. All right, gang, but now it is time for hashtag #AskStuffandThings. Remember, if you have a question for me and you would like it answered on the Sunday Stuff and Things, tweet at SATBradley with the hashtag #AskStuffandThings. Or if you are a Patreon supporter, you can write to me via Patreon and go right to the front of the line. You can hit the super thanks button under this video and go right to the front of the line, or you can leave questions, comments, and feedback under my YouTube videos in the comment section. Just like... Getting old, gang, and it's very dim in here. Just like at Roger Stray Dog 647 did. I've been watching your videos for a number of years, but rarely comment. I enjoy your ideas. Stop that, computer. And opinions. Just a few observations that you can think about or ignore. Number 1. I'm intrigued by your working videos, but I don't have the time to sit and watch them all the way through. Is it possible to edit them to be shorter? Maybe post a long version and a short one? I like black and white photos. Oh, this is number 2. I like black and white photos. There is something about the simplicity and contrast that appeals to me that the color does not. Color photos get lost in the color. Is it possible to make some of your photos black and white and then compare to see which are more captivating? Keep up the good work. Thank you at Roger Stray Dog 647. I really edit the working videos down a crazy amount anyway. They're only around 30, 40 minutes. And that's taking a 8 to 10, 11, 12-hour day and contracting it that much. The first couple episodes I posted were like an hour and a half. But yeah, those videos have gotten much shorter. I don't know, maybe you haven't checked it out in a while, but they're usually around the 30 to 40 minute mark at the most. As far as my photography, I will sometimes check to see if I like a photograph better in black and white, but usually when I'm taking the picture, I know kind of what I intend, like, oh, this is a color photograph and I'm taking it because I like the colors. I originally was planning on doing mostly, if I was using my film camera, to use black and white film in the camera and do color with my digital camera. But now my film camera hasn't been working and I haven't been using it, so I've been using only my digital camera, and so I'm mostly taking color photographs. But if there's something that just screams like, oh, this should be in black and white, then yeah, I will try that. Next, we have at Cheesy Bacon, who says, how you doing, man? Pretty well, thank you. We have some feedback from last week's Sunday Stuff and Things. This is from Ashes of the Phoenix. Happy 4th of July, Brad. My favorite day of the year. Happy 4th of July. Ashes of the Phoenix is a good supporter on Patreon as well. At Maisie1263 said, no worries about talking to yourself with your camera. I shoot video diaries all the time when traveling, and I promise, no one cares and usually goes about their business. No one cares and they usually go about their business. I've even had people jump out of the shot apologetically, which is hilarious. If anything, talking into the camera will give you more solo courage as you're out and about. Yeah, I mean, I probably overstate me being reticent about that. I don't really care what people think, but people will, I don't know if it's just my town in particular or something, but people will be very shocked acting when they see you talking in a camera, which I do find weird. Like, this should be something that's been pretty ubiquitous now for several years. But if I'm walking around with the camera and talking to it, people give me, what the hell? Like, they give me looks like that and they talk to each other. It's like, it's odd. And I notice it just in my street photography. If they see me with my camera and I bring it to my face, people are like, like they freak out. They don't like having their photographs taken blatantly. I have to surreptitiously do it most of the time when I'm doing candid photographs. If I ask somebody, usually they'll say yes and they're polite, but if they just see me like with my camera up at my eyes, they don't like that. They're not used to that. I'm sure in places like New York, Chicago, big cities, places in Europe, it might be different. But in my city of Bellingham, people act weird about it. Next, we have some more feedback. This is from Uranium Rock. Sorry to see the Pacific Northwest is also infested with those bland panel buildings, IKEA buildings. They're capitalism versions of those apartment blocks they built in the Eastern Bloc under communism. Truly spiritless architecture. And yeah, I guess when I was walking around in that park, there were some new condos being put up. And I will agree, there's a lot of really stupid looking new architecture around here, especially if it's a large project like an apartment complex or like an office building or something. They all look the same. They all follow that stupid like Southern California style of architecture that just looks like crap. And yeah, there's no personality to it. It's like a mini mall in Southern California from 1989 or something. I don't know why that is what, like, it's not even municipal architecture. It's like, it's big developments, apartment buildings, apartment blocks, office buildings. They all look like that and they all look ugly. At Solar Labyrinth, as a lifelong James Bond fan, I love the original Fleming novels, but when I want something a little more realistic and less sensational, Le Carré is without peer. I was talking about the Jean Le Carré novels. I also started with The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and then went to the beginning with Call for the Dead and A Murder of Quality, which those are the two I haven't read yet. They are definitely different in tone, but I still enjoyed them. Now I am reading The Looking-Glass War and can't wait for Tinker Tailor Next. The film is also one of my favorites. I recently bought The Company by Robert Little, which I am really excited about. It apparently provides the USA CIA side of the same time period as the Smiley novels. It's long, but I may take it on after Tinker Tailor. Cool. The Company is not something I've heard of, and Robert Little is a author I have not heard of, so I'm going to look that up and check it out. Thank you for that. Next, we have first impressions for Pipe Force Episode 2. Very few of you watched the video, like way fewer than would normally watch a first impressions video on a pipe blend, so I don't know what was going on there. Are you guys aware that this is out? Did you want to watch that? Did YouTube hide it from you? I don't know, but check it out because it is out. And we had some comments from there. We had at Richard Thompson 6079 saying, I'm looking forward to the full review. The marketing graphics for Pipe Force turned me off, but it sounds like an interesting blend. You don't like the creepy goat man on the cover? To me, this reminds me of kind of like Star Fox. If you guys remember that, I guess there was the Super Nintendo version, but I think of mostly the Nintendo 64 version. This is kind of like a grown-up, weird, alternate version of Star Fox characters, in my opinion. Next, at Tom Brown 1898 says, Bradley, essing outside changes a lot of the characteristics of a blend, which is why I usually don't do it. My favorite place, and that's true, if you have a big crosswind going on, it can totally alter the way a blend acts. My favorite place to ess was in my car back when I drove 40,000 miles per year. That's a long time, or a lot of miles. But enough of the good old days. The periquing of different types of leaf might have gotten its start a number of years ago in a conversation Russ Willett had with Mark Ryan, the owner of Le Poche. I never know how to pronounce that. Tea company, they're the ones who produce most of the perique. Russ suggested trying it with Bright Virginia, and Mark said it wouldn't work because of the delicate structure of the leaf compared to the strain of Burley, which is the base of traditional perique. So they decided to lower the pressure and have the time. The results were amazing. Produced a flavor never tasted before. It came out very malty. Russ put out malty, M-A-L-T-Y. Russ put out a limited number of tins containing the leaf. You have persuaded me to get a tin of today's blend, Pipe Force Episode 2. Great show today. And yeah, I've heard a similar thing at Tom Brown. When I was talking about, there's an article I was reading that was talking about, my camera just automatically stopped because it hit the 30-minute recording limit. How long has this Sunday Stuff and Things been? That's crazy. I'm not sure where we were when we were talking about at Tom Brown 1898's comment about Russ Willett and Mark Ryan from LA Poche and the whole process of creating non-traditional perique component varietals and stuff, but very interesting stuff. And I think I had read that as well in some articles when I was doing some research on that, so very cool. And then we had at Rich Newman saying, the Pipe Force blends just seem like the leftover teas from Jensen's Bird series. I liked half the Bird blends, but haven't been tempted by any of the Pipe Force blends. I mean, yeah, they do feature some similar components, but if they have the components, why not make use of them? And Per George Jensen seems to be good at making use of them. All right, gang, thank you so much for that feedback. Please keep it coming in. We've been going on very long in this Sunday Stuff and Things, so I think it's time to bring it to a close, but now it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where we thank our Patreon supporters. Remember, if you would like to support the channels on Patreon, there is a link in the description box below, and it is pretty vitally important to the continuation of these channels. It helps make it possible for me to make these videos. And so if you would like to show your support, you can support us on Patreon. $5 a month would go down really well. But every week we shout out those who support the channels at $25 a month or more. These are the producers of all the Stuff and Things content. People like Glenn Dunnington, Jason Buckner, Ryan McFadin, Arcturus, Ashes of the Phoenix, Jonathon Proctor, Kyle Waitkunas, ConCoClem, Charles Mowers, and Friendly Piper. And of course, the Maniacs, the crazy people who support the channels at $100 a month, people like Bob Magee. And we'll never forget our dearly departed friend and Hall of Fame member, Peter Straub. Gang, lots of good stuff to look forward to on Stuff and Things and working, and one episode on Stuff and Things Plays, so please check out all those channels. Check your subscriptions, because I still find people telling me that they have been unsubbed to some of my channels. Check your feed, make sure that notification bell is clicked if you want to be appraised of when I posted a new video, because again, people have told me, oh, I haven't seen you post anything in weeks. I'm like, I'm posting things every week, so I don't know if YouTube is doing this or what the deal is. But check my camera feed, check my YouTube feed, and make sure that you're getting all the videos that I'm putting out. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a normal Sunday Stuff and Things. I'll see you later. Bye.